All right. Good morning, everybody. Let's give it another minute or so to see who else is going to show up and get them all in the room. I appreciate you all joining. All right. All right. Looks like we have a decent number of folks in there. We're going to go ahead and start. Um, Thank you all for joining us today to go over the contractor meet and greet for the ReOregon HARP program. This is just kind of a general overview of the program and our expectations and interactions that we're going to have with the contractor. Um, the chat function is not open, so please use the Q&A to enter in any questions you have throughout the presentation. And at the end of the presentation, or if we elect to do so in the middle of it, we'll address some of those questions. All right. Without further ado, welcome. So today you're going to have myself, David Kevorkian. I'm a vendor for the state working on the construction piece of the HARP program. I've been in this industry for a number of years, started out in the private sector, moved over into the advisory sector, and have lived maybe the last 10 years in disaster recovery. So this is very much what I like to do, and you know the participants in this program are very much the people that I strive to help. We'll also be joined by Alexis Santucci. And Alexis, do you want to give a quick introduction?
Yeah, hi everyone. Thank you for being here today. I am a development and production with Oregon Housing and Community Services, and I work on the ReOregon HARP program, really focusing on developing our processes, procedures, doing technical assistance for this program. And I come from a background doing residential design work. So, yeah, thank you for being here.
Perfect. All right, and Alexis and I and a number of the other team members work very closely together, both internally and with external partners, to problem solve and find solutions, best paths and approaches, and that kind of thing. So we're a very close knit group here. So today, what we're going to cover, and this is really from a construction perspective, the program overview, uh, which is the why and the what, the HARP construction pathways, which represent the different avenues that um, potential participants can come through, the different program and project requirements, which will kind of detail what the different expectations are depending upon that pathway, the necessary environmental and engineering, um, general program familiarization, the contractor selection process, moving into the pre-construction meeting and how we discuss what the project entails with the applicant and the contractor, um, and then just touching on all of the different inspections and inspection points required by the program, closing with a Q&A period if there's time available, which there should be a fair amount of time. So program overview. Just to re-say it, I know we're all familiar with what occurred in 2020, but as a result of those wildfires and the straight line winds, a good deal of federal funds were set aside for the disaster recovery um, for Oregon. So OHCS is utilizing those funds to help folks find their way back home through a number of different avenues and channels. Um, the one thing that I will note here is that while we're all sort of familiar with state programs or possibly familiar with the state programs, federal programs have a number of different requirements and hoops that need to be jumped through in order to achieve a compliant and complete project. So there are some elements, and I will readily admit that that there will be things that may make no sense or may seem excessive, and they generally all tie back to a particular, federal regulation or requirement. So again, we offer financial assistance to help homeowners repair, rebuild, or replace homes lost or damaged in the disasters. And this is applicable to both the damaged site, and depending upon circumstances, a site other than that of the damaged site. So what the applicant can expect to experience as they move through the program, and many of the folks are beyond this stage, but they filled out the eligibility questionnaire, and based on those responses have been invited to apply to the program. Many of you are familiar with the application process and all of the questions and documentation requirements associated with that. Once that's completed, we'll do an eligibility review, which ensures that everything that was provided by the participant or the applicant was is accurate and helps tell that story of how and why and when we will be able to help that applicant come home. After that point, we do our inspections and DOB review. This will be where members of the construction team, the construction advisors, will reach out to the applicant and schedule a date and time to come out, review the property or the subject site, if one is there, or perhaps an MH park if they're going into a park, and identify all of the different needs of both the applicant and the structure and site. So in other words, just there may be additional elements that the participant's unaware of that we need to capture as part of the scope of work, and we'll touch on those a little bit later. A lot of those relate to environmental requirements and things of that nature. At that same time, we'll be performing a DOB review, which is us reviewing the funds that the applicant has received for whatever purposes. And we look at the funds, the purpose of the funds that are being used for either repair or replacement, so insurance funds, FEMA funds, that kind of thing. And that's what we identify as homeowner funds, and that factors into calculations down the road. So we complete the inspections, complete the DOB review, environmental reviews it, and again, we'll get a little bit deeper into environmental. Goes to award determination. The applicant's made aware of what their award amount, what the ceiling for their award amount is, and between that step and the grant agreement step, we will work with the applicant and help them identify a contractor, advise them on how to get what they need back from the contractor so that we can move them into a construction agreement and ultimately the grant agreement and ultimately then construction. Number of steps during construction that we're going to get into in a little bit. All right, so for awareness, the pathways are generally determined as a result of our initial inspections, as well as what the applicant's desire is. So the construction pathway will be largely built out within the eventual scope of work that the applicant receives. So for instance, if an applicant was a manufactured home replacement because they'd previously been in a park and now don't have what we call site control, we will generate what the maximum allowance would be for somebody in that situation. And that would be their potential award amount. Identify a park or unit that they're interested in, and to come back to us and continue that conversation as far as what site it's going on and that kind of thing. Rehabilitation applies to all structure types that are not being replaced or reconstructed. So both a stick-built home that is the original structure that was that's in a different location, or a manufactured home that was purchased to replace the original one that was on the site. Just as a few examples, all of those would be eligible for rehabilitation. And then reconstruction generally applies to folks who had they either previously owned them and no longer have a structure, or their structure repairs are excessive enough that it requires a reconstruction. Those are generally the folks that will end up in a reconstruction path. I guess I just explained all that without going to the next slide. So we'll just jump in here. So manufactured homes, obviously they're built in a factory, transported to the site, maybe a park site, maybe a private site. And we will also evaluate that site for any septic system issues, well installation repairs, any other site-specific needs. Maybe there's some specific park requirements or HOA type requirements that we need to consider and build into that scope of work. So for rehabilitation, where that applicant already owns the structure or the replacement structure, we will come in, do our inspections, identify what doesn't meet housing quality standards as determined by HUD in the program. And whatever scope we add needs to exceed $3,000. Otherwise, it's generally considered ineligible because of just the costs involved with pushing out this project versus some minor repairs, which to this point we've generally seen are things like fences, which are ineligible anyway, would generally lead to somebody being determined ineligible. A scope of work in excess of 3,000, they will move forward within the program, and that manufactured homes, either built after 95 or with less than 50,000 in remaining repairs, will also be rehabbed. So that gets us into reconstruction, where if we go out to one of those rehab houses and the cost of repair exceeds 80% of the reconstruction value determined by the program, we will flag that one for a reconstruction. So the other ways you can get into a reconstruction is if you already own the vacant lot, or if you still own the original lot and that primary structure has been condemned, documented unsafe by us, or another another agency that can determine that structure is unsafe. In those instances, we will reconstruct the home and put it on the reconstruction path. Program and project requirements. So all of the work must comply with current federal, state, local building codes, as well as the established program standards, which I will show later how to find some of these different elements. All materials used follow standards that conform to HUD requirements or specified program plans. All materials will be of new and good quality. So these are specified within our standards, within the eventual plan sets for homes, and the expectation there is that these homes are generally at what's considered an off-the-shelf or a builder grade type quality. So HUD's got specific requirements and rules around what we can and cannot fund in a project. So the scope of work that in other words, as an example, the laminate countertop is what we would generally specify in the scope. So if the applicant, had expected granite countertops or something of that nature, the intent of the program is not necessarily to restore the home to the original, the level of quality of the original components. It's to create a home that's safe and habitable and meets just minimum program standards. So contractor expectations, the contractor will be required to adhere to the scope of work, or the plan sets, or whatever combination therein equals that scope of work. The contractors are responsible for obtaining all the required building permits, providing all necessary equipment, labor, building to the different green building energy efficiency standards as set by the program. In addition to that, there may also be environmental requirements or environmental remediation that needs to occur, where the contractor will have to retain a qualified abatement contractor or remediation contractor to perform that work, and ultimately provide back to the program the clearance notice for whatever that work was. That scope will be identified within the scope of work and within the provided documents. The one caveat there is if during, let's say, a repair where something is, a wall is opened up and something is discovered that could be potentially hazardous, or maybe a shovel goes into the ground and we identify something potentially architecturally significant, that's where the contractor would need to hit pause and contact the applicant and the construction advisor, and we would address that from there. So contractor eligibility requirements. Largely anybody that's already a registered contractor, a residentially licensed contractor registered with the state of Oregon, will be considered as a potential contractor to work within the program, or to provide services for the applicant as a result of the program. The contractors cannot be debarred from working on state or federal projects, and they must be in good standing with the Construction Contractors Board. So what we do at this point is, if the contractors expressed interest in the program, or the applicant has identified a contractor that they want to work on that project, we will help you through the contractor registration process, review your information, and effectively say yes or no as to whether or not that information that was provided is adequate such that you can perform work for the program. Environmental and engineering. So environmental and engineering services will either be provided for by the program, or in certain cases, the contractor will be required to provide those services. Generally speaking, there are going to be a number of environmental things the contractor needs to be aware of. If you can exit, so as for the environmental and the engineering piece, there are going to be a number of things that ideally the program will provide. In some cases, the contractor may need to provide things like building plans, stormwater design, geotechnical and site assessments, septic system inspection, jurisdictional waters and wetlands delineation, phase 1 and 2 environmental site assessment, your typical land survey, and your typical elevation certificate. These are all the elements needed to move potentially needed to move a project forward. The program environmental team will identify some of these needs and requirements. So for instance, stormwater design, deals with addressing the rainwater runoff based on the amount of impervious surface that we're going to create. So in other words, for a reconstruction, if we're starting at a blank lot, we will need to create and implement a method by which we hold the rainwater runoff on the property and allow it to leach back into the property. So that's just kind of an example of one of the elements that the environmental team will identify, and either the program or the contractor will need to get that design done. Hazardous materials remediation requirements. So on some of these projects, they may contain lead-based paint, asbestos, other heavy metals identified as the RCRA 8 materials. We test for all of these. If any of the projects come back with hot soil or lead-based paint or what have you, that scope will be added to the eventual scope of work for the contractor, and the contractor will again need to retain a qualified firm to perform those actions. Give me 1 second. Okay, so with those, again, the contractor will also again need to provide the clearance back to the program that whatever the remediation has been completed satisfactorily. And again, our construction advisors will help in those discussions and kind of help guide the contractors and the applicants down that path, just because we do recognize that this is not an everyday type of activity for many contractors. So accessing materials and resources, the re.oregon.gov page contains a great deal of information on the different activities and responsibilities that both the applicant and the contractor need to do. Also included there is our construction standards and expectations documents, HARP policy, action plans. Ultimately, the contractor and the applicant will be able to find essentially almost everything they need on the website. However, we will also provide construction advisors to work with the applicant and the contractor and help them navigate pretty much every aspect of the program, navigate all of the different programmatic federal, state, local requirements, pretty effectively here to be that partner that helps the participant and their contractor get to a final project completion. So don't hesitate to reach out if there's a question once your participant gets into the pipeline. All right, so contractor selection. Once the contractor is identified by the participant as their desired contractor to work on the project, if not already registered in the Neighborly system, which is our system of record, we will direct you to enter your information into the official system of record, and we will move you through that process to get you assigned to that project ultimately. Once you are in the system, we can start assigning you tasks and actions to be taken with, excuse me, to be taken with that participant. So things such as meeting requests, document reviews, things of that nature will all generally be sent through the Neighborly portal. The contractor has their own contractor page within the portal that details what the projects are that they have, the draw schedules for those projects. That's where you will receive tasks, draw requests, complete work orders, provide additional information, whatever else is needed at that point. So once that contractor is identified, we will establish a pre-construction meeting. We'll discuss the scopes of work, the different document requirements, and just generally ensure that everybody between the participants and the applicants in the program, that we're all on the same page as far as expectations, dates, activities, that kind of thing. Again, that construction advisor, that construction help is here for you, because we do understand that this is a very daunting process, or can be, but it's much easier to navigate using us as frequently as you can. different inspections. So the program will perform draw and milestone inspections at the pre-established milestones. So a contractor, let's say selected for reconstruction, has a specific set of milestones that are pre-established, and generally will be agreed to at the pre-construction period prior to signing the construction agreement. The draw milestones are at this point they're non-negotiable. However, given certain program project needs or activities, there may be a little flexibility there, but generally speaking, a rehab, and you can refer back to this after the meeting too, but a rehab milestone draw schedule is generally going to be as follows: 10% for the first draw, which is the permit, mobilization, and site prep, and then 30, 30, 20, 10, and you can kind of see what that flow is. This is just a general, so depending upon what the rehab scope actually is, will kind of dictate whether or not all 5 of these draws will be applicable. Reconstruction and manufacturer replacement, however, will all generally fall into the same milestones that are identified here. So again, that first draw would be 10%. The next draw would be foundation, floor framing, foundation inspection. The next draw would be, your ready to close. And then the final draws would be when everything's completed, and then after all of the final documents are uploaded and confirmed present. Manufactured home is effectively 3 draws. It says 4, but as far as the work is concerned, 30% up front. Actually, this slide needs to get fixed. 30% up front. We do recognize that MH dealers and manufacturers typically need a fairly large down payment to begin fabrication. That's kind of why this first draw is a little bit larger. For any additional questions, again, we have the Q&A. I expect there will be a number of questions in there, or reach out to construction@support.reoregon.org, and you can find more at the website. And just quickly before we go to Q&A, I wanted to share the website. Right. Okay, so this is the ReOregon website, and if you navigate to the About ReOregon, you can see on the left side all of the different expandable menus and whatnot. Builders and contractors. This is a good place to familiarize yourself as a potential contractor. The construction standards are in this section, which this is our version. Where are we at? So downloadable here in English or Spanish. This is our version 1. We will be updating this as we need to throughout the life of the program. But that generally lays out the expectations for what we want to see within the program design and the different elements and materials and whatnot within the house or the manufactured home. So that kind of brings us to the Q&A section. And I'm sorry, Alexis, did you want to add anything or build on anything I've said so far?
No, I think that's great.
All right, so looking at the Q&As, all right. So let's see, taxation of monies. So some of these questions I'm not going to be able to answer in this forum, just because this is more geared towards the contractors, and those types of questions. Anything that's sort of grant related or programmatic or financial as it relates to the applicant, not necessarily construction payments, I'm not going to be able to answer. So somebody does ask, will the homeowners be provided with a list of approved builders to pick from, or what is the process for the homeowner to select their builder? So the state maintains a list of residentially licensed contractors, which the applicant will be directed to be able to find a contractor. We're not, there is no sort of preferred vendor or anything of that nature. The contractor list is open to all vendors that are interested. So if an applicant finds a contractor within the full contractor list that will exist on the website, stemming from the contractor board data, if they pick a contractor on there, reach out to the contractor, and the contractor is interested, we can help walk them through that registration process and whatnot. But they're kind of at no point in time will we direct or cause anybody to be directed to a specific contractor or a specific vendor, just simply because there's procurement issues behind that we typically don't want to steer anybody towards any eventual vendor that's receiving funds from the program. So to go a little deeper into that, when the applicant is made aware of what their potential award amount is, the construction advisory team is flagged to reach out to that applicant and discuss the contractor selection process. And it's at that point that we'll walk them through, where to go for the list, how to find a contractor, what information they need to relay to the contractor, and that kind of thing. But because currently the approach is putting the reins in the hand of the homeowner, there's not a lot that we're going to do to push or sway or that kind of thing, an applicant to a particular contractor. Right. Are you expecting that these projects will come in one at a time, or is there a potential for them to be grouped by timeline and geography? That also is kind of a tough question. Ideally, we're getting everybody through as fast as humanly possible. Obviously, in reality, there's a number of different variables there. What I would expect to see would be, the folks with the lower threshold for construction to move faster than folks with the higher threshold, insofar as like actions and activities, where a repair of a kitchen would probably come through the program faster than a new construction, just because of the different complexities there. So no, there's not necessarily grouping by timeline or geography, although it may work out that way. Ultimately, there's not an intent there to hold folks from moving forward while waiting on other folks to catch up. So what wage base is expected? Is this a certified prevailing wage issued? No, this is not. Not until we get into a much different area, which is not contemplated under the scope of this program. So your rates are your rates. We are setting our cost reasonableness expectations. So in other words, if the cost reasonableness determines that the project should cost $100,000 and a contractor comes in at $200,000, that's considered unreasonable, and we wouldn't be able to justify that cost. So we are anticipating typical wages for the area that are not subject to, let's say, like Davis-Bacon regulations and that kind of thing. All right, let's see. So what level of contingency is provided in each contract? Recognizing that things often change midstream or something unexpected is identified. So yes, we do recognize the fact that once a project is under construction, there may be elements that are identified that require a change in scope or modification to the scope that was provided initially. In those instances, the contractor is expected to reach out to that construction advisor and begin the process of identifying what those are, creating whatever the additional scope elements are, and doing our cost reasonableness for those additional elements if they're determined to be needed. So it's not necessarily a level of contingency insofar as you have a contract with an extra 10% in it to kind of spend wherever. It's a case by case based on the level of need. So if, again, going back to a repair, if we open up a wall and there's clearly a structural problem, we're likely going to 99 times out of 100 going to address that structural problem, and there's not necessarily a concern of funding for that. What I would say is that we may end up in a point, depending upon the structure, where activities or actions performed during a rehab may result in pushing that project over into a reconstruction. In that case, I would imagine that, of course, the contractor would be compensated for work performed to that point, and then whatever the additional work is. So I hope somewhere in there is an answer to that. So no to contingency, but yes to being able to evaluate the additional necessary work scope and allocate additional funds if necessary. All right. Do we already have a list of projects approved for this program? So for this program, application opened up back in April. And we've had a fairly good subscription rate with hundreds of folks in the pipeline currently. So as we move through those, we will have a better ability to kind of zero in on what kind of projects these are, what makes up the percentages as far as whether they're rehabs, repairs, or replacements. What I can say is that largely looking at the initial data from the wildfires, that the Jackson County area tends to have the lion's share of potential projects. But it's difficult to say, to give an idea of number, because the lion's share may still mean that Lane County is going to have hundreds of folks as well. So it's probably a safe bet that if you operate within one of the 8 mid counties, that you would likely see somebody reaching out to you for some kind of work at some point. Who pays for the environmental and site assessment activities when there's a project? So the environmental and site assessment ideally is going to occur prior to the applicant getting that scope of work. So there are a number of things environmentally that we are required to investigate prior to moving into a construction status. And then there are a number of things that may or may not be done as far as engineering is concerned, may or may not be done within that same time frame. So regardless of what point the engineering occurs, the engineering will be compensated for. So if a set of plans needs to be designed and the program designs it, then the program will interact with that engineer and then provide you with the scope of work, the building plans, whatever other additional engineering materials are needed there. Conversely, if we include within the scope of work, getting the plan set drawn, the environment plan set drawn, survey elevation, those kinds of things, those will be compensated for to the contractor after construction start. So the rehab rebuild timeline will start when? Rehab rebuild timeline technically starts at the issuance of notice to proceed. So once the applicant identifies a contractor, and then we execute the construction agreement and move the applicant to funding. Once that applicant's funded, which is in a very short period of time after the award is made to them, you will be issued the notice to proceed, and the notice to proceed gives you a window to ideally take everything that we've provided to you, turn around and throw it at the permit department to have them do their reviews or what have you. So for a repair, we're looking at 180 days from the NTP, and for recon, we're looking at 360. So, ideally, we would see movement within those first 14 days. Within those first 14 days from the contractor. And again, I expect a lot of communication between the contractor and the applicant and the construction advisor from the point of pre-construction all the way to construction start. Is the draw schedule a reimbursable like a standard construction loan or upfront? Standard construction loan is probably the best way to look at it. The milestones will be established prior to executing the construction agreement, and the milestones are generally the percentages that appeared in the PowerPoint, and I believe they're also detailed within the website. And those are accurate. Like I say, the vast majority of the time. There will be other projects where maybe the scope is such that we don't need to do 4 or 5 draws or what have you, but by and large, the reconstruction and the replacement are always going to be broke down in the percentages identified there. So what we would expect for draw 1 would be, the contractor to mobilize, apply for the permit, get all of this front end work done, and then submit for that first draw. And then the second draw they would submit for after the foundation's installed and like the floor system's on. So it's fairly structured. All right. For manufactured home replacement or new construction, it sounds like the contractor will be responsible for placing the order with the dealer. Is that correct? So kind of 2 answers there. We have 2 different types of approaches, whether it's with the manufactured home dealer or with a general contractor. Either way, either the MH dealer or the general contractor are going to be required to provide and install and perform everything identified in that scope of work. So as a contractor, yes, it's likely that you will have to support that down payment, because there's no funding being released within this program without having received something of equivalent type value. So once you get to that first draw where you've shown that you've made the initial purchase, and here's the initial purchase order, that satisfies the draw 1 requirement. Same thing whether it's a dealer or a contractor. Additionally, if there are environmental things happening on that site, I'm thinking in this instance, I'm thinking primarily like a private site. If there's stormwater management designs that have to be implemented or what have you, whoever the eventual vendor or contractor is for that participant has to be able to take the project from start to completion, or engage other subcontracted firms to take care of whatever the additional elements are. Because at the end of the day, we are contracting, the participants contracting with one entity, and that one entity is going to take them from start to finish. All right, so is it just for fire? How about an applicant that has hazardous items in their house like mold, and it created a health issue and now needs to be remodeled or rebuilt? So the fire is for the participant to be eligible. The qualifying thing was that they were in a home that they owned, whether on owned or leased land, that was impacted by the identified fires or the straight line winds that occurred in 2020. So if they meet that eligibility, whether they're at the original house that was impacted by the fire, the straight line winds, or whether they've purchased a replacement home, we will still assess either one of those structures. So so with that, when we go in, there's a number of different things that we evaluate from a housing standards, housing quality kind of standpoint. You know, are there electrical hazards, or is it raining in the living room? Things like that will cause us to look at the home and say, no, these are the things that are deficient, and these are what we need to fix. In issues where it revolves around deferred maintenance or common homeowner repair type activities, generally those may not be covered, just simply because it's not the nature of the underlying disaster that the funds were allocated for. So if somebody has no connection back to the fire or the straight line winds, then no, they're not eligible for assistance from the program. How fast will contractors be reimbursed for work completed? Excellent question. Oregon has prompt payment statutes that we have to adhere to, which, if memory serves, it's payment within 30 days of a fully submitted pay request. So when the contractor submits the invoice, let's say for draw one, the pay request is considered fully submitted when it passes the inspection. So we will receive your request for the draw inspection, schedule that draw inspection with you. If the draw inspection passes, then that begins the prompt payment date, or the prompt payment period. If that draw is rejected because of an incomplete scope or poor workmanship or something along those lines, then we just allow you to make those corrections and resubmit, and then upon a successful approved draw, that'll start that timeline. Are applicants allowed to customize a selected floor plan? So generally speaking, no. There may be other considerations there, obviously, if maybe there's multiple disabled people in the home to where we need to address, let's say, all of the restrooms or hallways or something along those lines to provide additional accessibility. But largely, no, the program's designed to eliminate as much as it can to eliminate any additional time extending type of actions. So if the applicant already has a floor plan that's already been engineered and permitted for that site, obviously we will look at that and determine how much, if not all of that, that we can pay for. And that would mean that they can effectively pick their own plan because they've already paid for it and whatnot. But program provided plans will be designed in a manner that if you fall into a particular square foot bucket from your original structure, you will be afforded plan 6. and you can choose from a reversed version of Plan 6 or one with, we may have different front elevations to give appearance, the different appearances, so that we're not building the same house over and over again in the same neighborhood. But generally speaking, no, any deviations, upgrades, what have you, are generally discouraged. Just being that the program is geared to get that project completed as fast as possible, with the intent of getting you into something that's safe and habitable, as opposed to something that's overly customized or different than the program intent. What is the best path to get our company's name in front of these potential project owners? I can't really tell you what to do in that regard. I obviously can't tell you who the applicants are. What I would suggest, though, just as a best practice, is identify what burn zone, if not all of them, you want to work in, what one of the 8 mid counties rather, you want to work in, and contact that local outreach agency, or there may be an affiliated intake agency, or just a regular community partner. There's going to be a number of different entities that are interested in seeing that the applicant gets all the way back home. And that's where I would reach out to first if I was a contractor, other than the typical, billboard and signage kind of thing. Again, how do I let customers know that I'm aware of this program and willing to work with them? Exactly that. Letting different folks know that, different organizations or community organizations know that that you're familiar with the program, and you're interested in helping a participant get home. That would really be the best way. Again, going back to procurement things, we can't say to the applicant that here's 3 contractors that we like, that we know the program, because then we're steering, and we can't do that. Are we the contractor in contract directly with the applicant, or is our contract with OHCS to perform the work? That's a good question. For the current path, or for all of the current paths, the contract is between the contractor and the applicant. The contract is written by the program. So if there's a previous contract in place between you and an applicant, we can get together on that and discuss. But if there is no previous contract, all of this will be done on program paperwork, and the contracts are generally contingent upon the program allocating the funds. So if ideally this will never happen, but if we get to a point where the construction agreement has been executed, and then for whatever reason the applicant maybe becomes ineligible or something else, that will nullify that contract. So I just do want to say that I do recognize that the relationship is between you guys. However, the program is providing the funds for it, and written in the contract is that the program has the ultimate say when it comes to whether or not a draw inspection is approved or denied. I know we only have a few minutes left. And Alexis, please jump in on, I know I'm just talking endlessly, but if you want to chime in, please do. When will the money be available to the applicants? Is it going to be January or February? So I think there's a number of different ways to come at that answer, but the way I would state it now is that it's really dependent upon how quickly we get somebody into a pre-construction status. So There's certain timelines and whatnot. Like is January, February doable? Yeah, absolutely. Can I tell you how many applicants will be in that bucket? No, I can't, because they're just all in different phases of either application or inspection or that kind of thing. Are they all grants, or are the properties specially assessed on taxes, or have some sort of lien from the state or the county for repayment, or no? So no, the program funds are federal funds used for the purposes of this program, and they're not required to be repaid unless in the event of something being non-compliant. Maybe the home wasn't built to the specified elevation, or something else that prohibited us from finishing that project. The program funds are contingent upon achieving a compliant and complete project. So in that instance, they would have to repay whatever amounts were expended there. But generally, there's no repayment or anything associated with any of those. Who or what entity performs the inspections required to finalize the pay request? So you will request from your construction advisor a draw request, which will initiate that process of us scheduling a time for you and the applicant to be out there, review the work completed to that point, and for all parties to sign off on it. If there are other municipal inspections required for that draw, then we would obviously expect to see evidence of the past municipal inspection. So once the homeowner chooses the contractor, does the contractor then sign up for the program at that point, or is there a way to register with the program in advance? So if the contractor has not already reached out to the program, then yes, they will register at the point that the applicant brings them to us and we've reviewed their information. For all of the participants on this call, we will send out in the coming days a portal for contractors that are expressing interest prior to an applicant or participant identifying them. So keep your eye open for that email, and that email will point to a link that will ultimately be on the ReOregon website. Will there be any sort of local meet and greets for HARP approved contractors to meet HARP applicants? We don't have anything set up as far as that's concerned now. I think we were interested in engaging contractor interest from these calls and from some of the outreach we were doing before we discussed doing large format in-person job fair style events. I think that's all of the questions. Again, if anybody has any additional questions, you can direct them to construction@support.reoregon.org, or refer to the ReOregon website. All right, with no additional questions, I'd like to thank you all for attending and listening for the extent of this, and don't hesitate to reach out. Thank you very much.